My question is, are there, in Dota 2, cosmetics which, regardless of Valve's best efforts, actively disadvantage you in some kind of meaningful way? I was fortunate enough to get the perspective on this from a two-time international winner, Collapse from Team Spirit, so I want to go over his comments and also look at all the items in Dota 2 that many players think are pay to lose. Before I get into that, I want you to know that I run a Discord server called Dota 2 Items and Info, where players discuss their cool items or talk about Dota, and we've started doing giveaways, and this week we're going to be giving away an unusual courier with Frostbloom, an unusual Batrider mount with Snowdrift, and a fully unlocked Exalted PA Arcana. So join the link in the description to join the Discord and enter the giveaway when it's posted next week, and please subscribe to my channel if you're interested in videos about Dota 2 items. Many players in Dota 2 contend that it may be the case, for certain items, that even though Valve makes efforts to negate their unfavourable aspects of some cosmetic items, or perhaps most of them, that these items still have a small yet measurable negative effect on your play from a competitive standpoint. You have to appreciate why people like to play with cosmetics in the first place. A lot believe that it makes them play better in some kind of way, or that when they do play better, they're more confident or enjoy themselves more. It can sound strange to say, but the way you dress in Dota can absolutely have an impact in some small way. It's not going to turn you into an international champion, but on the other hand, maybe humans just like looking at shiny things, and a fraction of a percent against your favour is something which, when you're playing the game for fun and not $40 million, is something everyone should accept, so we can all enjoy the most visually interesting games that we can. However, I wanted to look deeper into which items could cause specific problems, and which cosmetics in Dota 2 have the largest cause for concern, for their negative impact on your competitive form. Not to improve your win rate by a fraction of a percent, but more to look further into how Valve continues to develop cosmetics to make ever shinier things for players to buy. You'd have to argue that if cosmetics as a whole had a negative overall impact, the best professional players would cease to use them in their entirety, but the fact that almost all pro players have very dense inventories and carefully crafted loadouts, it points in the other direction. Although cosmetics might not turn you into a two-time TI winner, I had the opportunity to recently ask one. I've just finished working for 2 weeks on an insane deal to source a Holy Grail cosmetic item for Collapse of 2021 and 2023 TI winning Team Spirit. I asked whether there were any specific cosmetics in Dota 2 which he personally does not use due to their specific negative competitive disadvantage, and if not, whether he had ever heard of anyone being told not to use an item for that reason on his team or from anyone else in the pro scene. Before I touch on that, I wanted to first display what I think is the most egregious pay-to-lose mechanic in all of Dota 2. It's commonly known that the Rubik Arcana is not used by professional players. I searched 30 past Rubik games of previous TIs, and not a single one used a fully leveled Rubik Arcana. This item, although incredible in its customization and depth, its uniquely colored abilities for stolen spells can massively self-nerf a key part of Rubik's toolkit: confusion. Not knowing during a fight which team casted a key ultimate or whether or not it must be avoided for damage or entered for healing is a huge aspect of the hero, and paying for a skin which, although looks incredible, negates this key aspect. While playing this game, you fight over fractions of a percent of advantage in efforts to build those marginal gains over time, and yet give away tens of those fractions just by using this skin. Now, Collapse explained that there is in fact some unusual items that have measurable negative win rates. He specifically named Gold Drop on Mars for something which he refuses to use. This is an unusual item from Dragon's Horde which drops gold coins behind your hero as you move, and it makes total sense why this could have a measurable negative impact. Trail items commonly find criticism when it comes to specific disadvantages, but Valve has done a lot of work to negate this as much as possible. They do their best efforts to only make the same relative information which could otherwise be available to the enemy shown when the hero is visible, while using something like Candycaster, another unusual trail effect which came out in the event prior to the Dragon's Horde. Candycaster is rightfully criticised by myself and many other unusual collectors for being horrendously shit, as its effect is incredibly muted. This effect drops candy canes and presents from your unusual item, but the effect is so small that even if you were told what to look out for, you would still not see them. It's perhaps this complaining which may have led to Gold Drop being as intense as it is today, and Gold Drop is, in my opinion, from an unusual collector's standpoint, an exceptional effect. The coins drop very intensely and leave a very visible trail trail, and the size of the coins is substantial. The gold color of those coins is extremely visible on all backgrounds, explaining the understanding to avoid these items among high tier players. Now, as for Candy Caster, the effect is so bad that even though it's a trail effect, I still see it constantly used by pro players. I counted 7 during TI, and I was very curious about the Candy Caster curse. I was wondering why so many pro players, many of which have very particular cosmetic inventories and effectively have the choice of any items they want, really. They have little restraint financially for something like a $40 unusual item and have better justification for purchasing it than everybody else, and yet so many of them own Candy Casters, and I didn't see a single Frostbloom during TI, which is objectively the best unusual effect there is. I asked Collapse about this also, and he explained that yes, he's aware that Frostbloom exists, although, for example, he does himself own a Candy Caster Verna for Batrider, but he buys the unusuals on the Steam market and just buys what's available. He said that if Frostbloom was available for every hero, he would not use this Candy Caster junk effect. This was my assumption for most pro players, is that they just don't understand the unusual effects for these items, because the entire reason my channel came into existence was the fact that during Frostivus 2023, these brand new items had no way of finding out what they looked like without buying them yourself. So I made videos about them explaining the effects, but the problem being the Steam market listings for these unusual items include all 3 effects in the same market listing. So if you always purchase the first and cheapest item on the Steam market, you will always get a Candy Caster item, and never the more expensive and much better effects with Frostbloom. You have to go out of your way to search Frostblooms to purchase the item, which is tedious in itself and full of fake scam items that have had their item descriptions rewritten to allow those Candy Caster items to display in Frostbloom searches. This is what spawned the useful link spreadsheet, which contains Steam market listings to filter only showing Frostbloom unusuals so you can easily find them on the Steam market. I think it explains why so many pro players have these terrible unusual items, and the only explanation for how awful Candy Caster is that you can be one of the best players in the world and are happy to use them because they are effectively invisible. So to be clear, every single item that a Candy Caster effect exists, there is also the same item with Frostbloom. You just have to go out of your way to find it, and it will be more expensive. Next, I want to touch on a bunch of the Dota 2 items that specifically a lot of people have pinpointed as being problematic. It's often said that Sniper's Ardalan gun is far more visible than the Pebble gun he normally uses, basically shooting tracers which point directly to your location. If you're able to fire from somewhere in the fog, it's like a spotlight on your location. Although an incredible cosmetic effect, there is a chance that this could have some kind of negative impact at some point in your hundreds of hours of playing Sniper. The Mirana custom arrow is definitely more visible for enemies to dodge. I myself have unequipped this item, and my tolerance for fashion over function is extremely high. A common complaint was the pets for both Crystal Maiden and the Armadillo for all of those heroes that can use them. It was widely criticised on release for giving away your position when running through trees, and this was subsequently updated to improve this, but it still receives identical criticism today. Many of these trails do their best to not load these effects if you do not have vision of the hero themselves, which should resolve most of these problems, but in practice, those things like those effects popping out of vision can be cues enough in and of themselves. The Terrorblade Arcana has coloured footprints of your gem colour, which, although the base Terrorblade also has footprints, as many heroes do, being able to tint these with varying degrees of brightness values definitely has a negative impact in a small percentage. Many immortals make your spells far more visible, like the Mirana arrow, but also Jakiro's Macropyre and Ricky's Smokescreen is another. Giving a specific defined edge to your otherwise murky AoE can cause your spell's areas of effect to be really specifically defined for the enemy heroes, which is not something you exactly want. Other items like Sven's Cleave items can make his hit radius far more clear for the enemy also. Necrophos Immortal items is a massive problem on many levels, some players claim. It will tell the enemy very clearly whether or not you are around, as the Immortal effect is far more visible for the enemy player than the basic Heartstopper aura effect. Although the tooltip does exist, this can definitely have an impact on lower tier players. Many people simply don't understand the AoE, and this draws a solid line in the sand for whether or not you are or are not under the effect of this item, based purely on your hero's visual effect. The Nature's Prophet staff, which affects teleport effect, is extremely eye-catching immediately when cast, rather than the few fractions of a second of very little visual impact during the regular TP build-up. Slark has an item which makes a few of his abilities very visible in their AoE or when they are triggered, which some players contend is not a positive change. Personally, as a techies player, I do genuinely find better results with different minefield signs equipped. I'm not sure if that's pay to lose or pay to win, rather than just some skins being better than the default or the Arcana. I do find that this sign is more likely to be activated than the Arcana sign or the default sign, and players are more willing to investigate what it is, especially if they haven't seen it very often before and don't immediately know that it's the minefield sign for techies. Venge Immortal's wings can make her scream very visible and very clear when it otherwise may not be, and the same goes for Keeper of the Light's horse sneeze effect. There are plenty more items which you could argue have a similar problem, but on another tact, weather effects, I personally don't play with any of these. I know some are far worse than others, but there are some lunatics which play with these all the time, which might be strange for me to say when I play with the Reef's Edge terrain as my main loadout. People have differing opinions about terrains, but it's pretty common knowledge that people agree that Reef's Edge is the most dramatic change, and people argue that it's the most difficult to adapt to using. But the King's Journey also has very dense trees which can make pathing more difficult for some people, when in reality all terrains have identical tree paths. Obviously, visually, you can trip up at times, purely based on their visual models. People contended during my best ward skins video that some wards were better than others from a competitive standpoint, and that my unusual ward recommendation was going to make you lose games. Personally, this argument I give the least credit. I cannot create a scenario in my mind in which the colour or effect on your ward could ever possibly be even a minute factor in whether or not it gets dewarded. By the time it's visible to the enemy, it's not getting missed, and if it gets missed, I feel like it would have gotten missed regardless of its colour or effects. Pro players use obnoxious, unusual wards all the time. I feel the same with couriers of all shapes and sizes, trails and brightnesses. I don't think the design of your courier can ever play a legitimate role in its fate. Emblems are worth touching on. These are exceptionally rare items, which currently the only one obtainable is from the Dietai chest from years past. They're a 1 in 100,000 drop, meaning they cost $250,000 to unbox, and they have a 1-year shelf life from the moment of unboxing. They play a coloured animation ring around your hero which rotates with candles of the same colour, and if you're playing a ranged hero, will tint your auto attacks to a specific colour based on the colour of the emblem. They are used almost exclusively by pro players actually, and very few of these exist at any one time. I believe there's a group of collectors which collude to unbox these en masse and sell them together to maintain a certain price point, but their drop rate is so low that this is obviously not financially feasible. However, the emblem market is a very mysterious thing, and when they're about to expire, they get quick sold on the Steam market in the last 24 hours. And if you think, who is making these Steam market buy requests? Your answer is sharks. They're willing to lose $400 to $500 at a time, hoping that a new player will unbox an emblem that quickly sells it to them for the full duration, making a humongous profit in the process. If they get a single full duration emblem while buying 10 stinkers with less than a day left, they're still in the money. That's all I have to say. Please feel free to let me know down below which items you think I should have included. Thank you so much to Collapse for his input on this topic. I appreciate it massively, and I will continue to exterminate one candy caster at a time. Please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. I've been working extremely hard for the past 2 weeks on that item deal I mentioned earlier, but I'm finally back to making videos and I have a few more coming out soon. So please subscribe if you're interested. Check out the Dota 2 items and info Discord I run. Even if you're new to Dota 2 collecting, or if you're just curious about items and want to chat, please do come and say hello. Thank you to all my YouTube members for supporting my channel.